Picture this. You wake up one morning and your bank account is empty. Your friends won't return your calls. Your own mother is asking if the rumors are true, and your kids, they flinch when you try to hug them. What happened? You broke up with someone 3 months ago. Welcome to punishment. Not revenge, punishment. And today, we're diving deep into the dark psychology of why this happens, how it works, and what it reveals about human nature itself. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow is that hidden part of ourselves we refuse to see." And nowhere does the shadow emerge more violently than after romantic rejection. This isn't a video about hating women. This isn't even about women versus men. This is about understanding a specific pattern of human behavior that happens when love turns to warfare. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Some people don't just end relationships. They execute them. And understanding why requires us to look at the darkest corners of human psychology. The parts we pretend don't exist. The parts Jung warned us about. So if you've ever wondered why a breakup felt less like an ending and more like a war crime, stay with me. Because what you're about to learn will change how you see relationships forever. Let's start with a fundamental question. Why punish at all? When something ends, healthy people grieve and move forward. They feel pain, yes, but they process it internally. They don't weaponize it. So what's different about the person who punishes? Sigmund Freud gave us a clue when he talked about the ego and its fragility. He said the ego will do anything to protect itself from destruction, even if it means destroying others first. When a relationship ends, especially through rejection, something breaks inside the person who didn't want it to end. Not just their heart, their entire sense of self. Think about it. Relationships become mirrors. We see ourselves reflected in our partner's eyes. We build our identity around being chosen, being loved, being wanted. When that mirror shatters, who are we? The person who punishes can't answer that question. So instead of looking inward, they look outward. Instead of asking, "Who am I now?" they ask, "How do I make him pay?" Punishment becomes the new relationship. And that's the key insight. The punishment isn't really about ending things, it's about keeping things alive. The psychology of rejection. Nietzsche wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." But what happens when rejection turns someone into exactly that? Here's what science tells us. When we experience romantic rejection, the same parts of our brain light up as when we experience physical pain. Actual, real pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain that processes suffering, doesn't distinguish between a broken leg and a broken heart. Now add something else to this equation, social humiliation. In our ancestral past, being rejected by the tribe meant death. Exile was a death sentence. We're hardwired to fear social rejection at a primal level. When a woman is rejected, especially publicly or unexpectedly, it triggers ancient survival mechanisms. Fight or flight, except she can't flee from the pain because it's internal. So she fights, but she's not fighting you. She's fighting the unbearable feeling of worthlessness that rejection creates. Carl Jung called this the inferior function. When our primary way of operating in the world fails us, we regress into our most primitive, undeveloped responses. The nurturing woman becomes the destroying mother. The loving partner becomes the avenging fury. This isn't calculated evil. It's psychological collapse. Robert Greene writes in The 48 Laws of Power about the danger of wounded pride. Law 36 states, "Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge." But wounded pride can't ignore. It can't let go. It demands acknowledgement. It demands that the person who caused the wound suffers equally. This is why punishment often seems disproportionate to whatever actually happened. The punishment isn't responding to your actions. It's responding to her internal experience of annihilation. You might have simply said, "This isn't working for me." But what she heard was, "You are worthless and I'm throwing you away." Two completely different realities, two completely different motivations. And that gap between what happened and what was experienced, that's where the punishment lives. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this. He said, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people." When a relationship ends, that forfeited self demands compensation. The punishment is the bill coming due. Not on you necessarily, but you're the one standing there when it arrives. The power vacuum, he said. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries, but of more serious ones they cannot. This applies perfectly to breakup punishment. Half measures don't satisfy. If she can't have you completely, she destroy you completely. There's no middle ground. Why? Because relationships are power structures. And when one collapses, it creates a vacuum. During the relationship, power was shared, maybe unequally, but it was distributed. You had influence over her emotions. She had influence over yours. You made decisions together. Your lives were interwoven. Then suddenly, you announce it's over. In that moment, all power transfers to you. You decided. You chose. You acted. She became powerless. And human beings cannot tolerate powerlessness. Jung said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. When love dies, the will to power explodes into the space it occupied. The punishment isn't personal revenge. It's a power grab. She's seizing back control over the only thing she can still control, your suffering. Think about what gets targeted. Your reputation? That's your social power. Your money? That's your resource power. Your children? That's your genetic legacy and future power. Your new relationship? That's your power to move forward. Each attack is strategic, whether she realizes it consciously or not. She's not randomly lashing out. She's systematically dismantling the power structures that allowed you to reject her in the first place. Hobbes described life as nasty, brutish, and short, without social contracts. The relationship was your social contract. When you broke it, you returned to a state of nature. And in nature, there are no rules, only survival. The narrative weapon, here's where it gets really dark. The most dangerous punishment isn't physical or even financial, it's narrative. Robert Greene teaches that perception is reality. Control the story and you control everything. Watch what happens after a difficult breakup. She becomes a storyteller. And the story she tells has one purpose: to rewrite history so completely that you become the villain of a story you didn't even know you were in. Freud talked about retroactive inhibition, where new information causes us to forget or distort old memories. After a breakup, every good memory gets reprocessed through a lens of pain. That vacation where you laughed together? She was faking it because she was afraid of you. That gift you spent months planning, manipulation to control her? That time you supported her through a crisis? You were love bombing to create dependence. The relationship doesn't just end. It gets completely reconstructed. And here's the terrifying part. She believes this new version. This isn't lying. This is memory reconsolidation under emotional duress. Jung warned about this. He said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Facing her soul would mean acknowledging her part in what happened. Acknowledging that maybe you weren't a monster. Maybe the relationship just didn't work. Maybe she has growth to do too. That's unbearable. So the narrative becomes, you were always bad, she was always suffering, and now she's finally free to tell the truth. This narrative serves multiple purposes. First, it protects her ego from the pain of rejection. Second, it enlists allies in her cause. Third, it preemptively destroys your credibility if you try to defend yourself. Plato wrote about the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows for reality. The narrative she creates becomes the shadow on the wall that everyone believes is real. And you? You're screaming that it's just a shadow, but no one's listening. They're too captivated by the story. The Social Execution, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. But in the court of public opinion, expertise doesn't matter. Only the story matters." This is where modern punishment reaches its most sophisticated form. Social media execution. It works like this. First comes the vague post. Sometimes the person you take a bullet for is the one behind the trigger. Cryptic enough to avoid legal trouble. Clear enough that everyone knows who she means. The comments flood in. You deserve better, queen. I always knew something was off about him. Stay strong, we're here for you. She's not asking for this support. But she's not stopping it either. Each comment is a brick in the wall she's building around you. Then comes the detailed post. Not naming you directly, but describing situations anyone who knows you will recognize. The fight you had. The thing you said when you were angry. The time you forgot her birthday. All presented without context. All designed to paint one picture. Monster, abuser, narcissist. The words don't even need to be true. They just need to be believable. And they're always believable because humans are wired to believe victims. Especially female victims. This isn't sexism. It's biology and sociology combined. We're programmed to protect women. So when a woman says she was hurt, our default is belief. Your defense doesn't matter. Explaining makes you look worse. He's gaslighting her. Staying silent makes you look guilty. His silence speaks volumes. You've already lost before you opened your mouth? Epictetus taught that we cannot control external events, only our response to them. But what happens when the external event is your character assassination, and any response only makes it worse? The child is weapon. Now we enter the darkest territory. When children become weapons. Jung said, "The greatest tragedy of the family is the unlived life of the parents. But there's a greater tragedy. When parents use children to live out their revenge. Here's how it works. It's never obvious. She doesn't tell the kids, your father is bad. That would be too transparent. Instead, it's the sigh when his name comes up. The sad smile when they come home from his house. The carefully worded questions. Did Daddy seem happy? Does he talk about us? Does he have new friends? Each question plants a seed. Dad's happiness means he doesn't miss us. His new life means he abandoned us. His moving on means we didn't matter. The child's brain is wired to please the primary caregiver. Usually, that's the mother because courts favor maternal custody. The child lives with her. Depends on her. Reads her emotional climate every single day. And children are brilliant at adaptation. They sense what makes mom relax and what makes her tense. Talking positively about dad makes her tense. So slowly, unconsciously, they stop doing it. They start reflecting her pain back to her. I don't want to go to dad's this weekend. Dad doesn't really listen to me. It's weird at dad's house. She doesn't prompt these statements. She doesn't have to. The child is doing the psychological work for her, trying to ease her pain by validating her feelings. Freud called this identification with the aggressor. The child aligns with the parent they perceive as wounded to gain psychological safety. But the cost? The relationship with the other parent slowly dies. And here's what makes this punishment so devastating. It can't be proven. If the father complains, he's being dramatic. If he fights back legally, he's being aggressive and proving he's the problem. If he tries to talk to the kids about it, he's manipulating them. The system isn't designed to catch subtle emotional manipulation. It's designed to catch obvious abuse. This isn't obvious. It's insidious. Years pass. The children grow up believing a version of their father that never existed. And by the time they're old enough to think critically, the damage is permanent. Nietzsche said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." The invisible threads she's woven between herself and the children are pulling them away from you. And cutting those threads would hurt the children more than leaving them in place. The Performance of Happiness, Robert Greene writes about the art of absence in seduction. Sometimes the most powerful move is to disappear and let them wonder. But in punishment psychology, there's a twisted version of this. The performance of excessive happiness. Watch what happens. 2 weeks after the breakup, she's posting photos everywhere. New haircut, new wardrobe, girls' trips, nightclubs. Huge smiles. The caption? Living my best life. Never been happier. Freedom feels amazing. Is she actually happy? Maybe. Sometimes. But that's not the point. The point is that you see it. Every photo is a message. You are holding me back. Look how much better I am without you. You meant nothing. I've already replaced you. With myself. This is psychological warfare disguised as self-love. And it works because it triggers your ego. If she's this happy, maybe you were the problem. If she's thriving, maybe you made a mistake. If she doesn't miss you, maybe you weren't as important as you thought. Jung talked about the persona, the mask we wear for the world. After a breakup, her persona becomes weaponized. It's not reflecting her true state. It's reflecting the state she wants you to believe she's in. But here's the tell. Truly happy people don't perform happiness. They just live it. They don't need constant validation. They don't need an audience. The performance itself reveals the pain underneath. Schopenhauer said, "We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves to be like other people." After the breakup, she's forfeited the last quarter too. She's become entirely performance, entirely facade. And underneath? The same pain that's driving all the other punishment behaviors. The difference is this one has plausible deniability. I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm just living my life. But the frequency of posts, the timing of them, the content choices, all of it tells a different story. She's not living for herself. She's performing for you. The Allies and the mob Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." In breakup warfare, estimate her strategy by looking at her allies. Here's how the mob forms. She tells her story to her closest friends. They're outraged on her behalf. They've only heard her side. They have no reason to doubt her. Those friends tell their partners, who tell their friends. Each retelling loses nuance and gains certainty. By the time the story makes 3 jumps, you're not just a bad boyfriend. You're a monster. Now she has an army. They didn't sign up for this. They think they're supporting a friend through trauma. But they've become foot soldiers in a war they don't fully understand. This is where social media amplifies everything. One post reaches hundreds. Each supportive comment emboldens her. Each share expands the narrative. The mob doesn't need evidence. They need a villain. And you're it. Jordan Peterson talks about ideological possession, where people adopt beliefs that make them feel righteous without examining whether those beliefs are true. Her allies are ideologically possessed by the narrative of her victimhood. Questioning it would make them bad friends, so they don't question it. They reinforce it. And with each reinforcement, her conviction strengthens. She's not crazy. Look how many people agree with her. She's not overreacting. Look how angry they are on her behalf. The mob validates the punishment. And the punishment escalates because the mob expects escalation. They want justice. They want revenge. And she's the instrument through which they'll get it. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. But the mob has 1 ear and 1,000 mouths." No one's listening. Everyone's speaking. And the truth? The truth suffocates under the noise. The grief underneath, now here's the part most people miss. Underneath all the punishment, all the narrative control, all the social warfare, there's something simpler and more human. Grief. Carl Jung said, "The word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness." But what happens when someone refuses to feel the sadness? When someone can't tolerate the pain of loss, it mutates. It transforms into something else. Anger, blame, punishment. These aren't separate from grief. They are grief wearing a different mask. Think about what grief requires. It requires accepting that something you loved is gone. It requires sitting with painful emotions without trying to fix them. It requires admitting powerlessness over the situation. Most importantly, it requires feeling vulnerable. And vulnerability feels like weakness. Punishment feels like strength. So the person who can't grieve chooses punishment instead. Not because they're evil, because they're terrified of falling apart. Albert Ellis, the founder of rational emotive therapy, taught that humans create their own emotional disturbances through irrational beliefs. One of those beliefs is this: I cannot stand to be rejected. If someone rejects me, it proves I'm worthless. That belief makes grief impossible, because grieving would mean accepting the rejection, and accepting the rejection would mean accepting worthlessness. So instead of grieving, she fights. Every attack is a denial of the loss. Every punishment is a refusal to accept that it's over. Every scheme to stay in your life is an attempt to avoid the finality of goodbye. This is why the punishment often intensifies when you start genuinely moving on. It's not jealousy, though it looks like jealousy. It's terror. Because your moving on forces her to confront what she's been avoiding. It's really over. She really lost you. She really has to grieve now. And that's unbearable. Freud talked about melancholia, where the person can't complete the grief process because they've internalized the lost object. She hasn't just lost you. She's lost the version of herself that existed with you. That self is now dead. And she doesn't know who she is without it. The punishment is a desperate attempt to resurrect that dead self. If she can make you suffer, she's still your partner in some twisted way. If she can provoke a reaction, the relationship still exists. If she can stay in your thoughts, she hasn't really lost you, but she has. And somewhere deep down, beneath all the anger and the attacks and the narrative warfare, she knows it. That knowledge is a wound that won't stop bleeding. And until she can face it directly, until she can sit with the grief instead of weaponizing it, the punishment will continue. The path forward. So what do? How do you survive this? How do you protect yourself without becoming the monster she's accused you of being? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This is your North Star. Don't mirror the behavior. Don't fight fire with fire. Because here's what most men don't understand. Engaging in the battle is exactly what she needs from you. Your anger proves you're the problem. Your defense proves you're guilty. Your counterattacks prove you're abusive. Your silence proves you're cold. You cannot win a rigged game, so stop playing. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being strategic. Document everything, not to use against her, but to protect yourself if things escalate legally. Keep records of communications. Save threatening messages. Log incidents involving the children. But do this quietly, systematically, without drama. This is insurance, not ammunition. Second, establish boundaries and enforce them ruthlessly. No responding to provocative messages. No engaging with social media attacks. No defending yourself to neutral friends. No explaining your side of the story unless legally required. Every response is feeding energy into a system that runs on your attention. Starve it. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events. She can attack you. She can lie about you. She can turn people against you. These are events. Your judgment about these events determines whether they destroy you. If you judge that your reputation is your identity, you'll be destroyed when your reputation is damaged. If you judge that other people's opinions define your worth, you'll be destroyed when those opinions turn negative. If you judge that you need everyone to understand your side, you'll be destroyed by the impossibility of that goal. But if you judge that your integrity is internal, not external, if you judge that people who believe lies without investigating aren't worth impressing, if you judge that your worth is inherent, not granted by others, then the attacks land differently. They still hurt, but they don't devastate. Third, focus ruthlessly on building your actual life, not performing your life. This is the distinction she missed. Real happiness doesn't need an audience. Real success doesn't need validation. Real peace doesn't need to be proven. Get therapy. Not because you're broken, but because navigating this requires tools most people don't naturally have. Process your own anger, your own hurt, your own role in what happened. Rebuild your relationship with your children through consistency, not grand gestures. Show up. Be present. Be stable. Over time, truth has a way of emerging, but only if you're patient enough to let it. Work on your career. Invest in friendships. Develop new skills. Exercise. Create, build. Not to show her what she's missing. To show yourself who you're becoming. Conclusion. Jung said something profound near the end of his life. He said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." This is your moment of choice. You can become bitter. You can become hateful. You can become obsessed with justice and fairness and making sure everyone knows the truth. And you know what? You'd be justified. The punishment you've endured might be genuinely unfair, but justification doesn't make you happy. It doesn't make you free. It doesn't give you your life back. Or you can choose differently. You can decide that her inability to grieve doesn't have to become your inability to live. Her need for punishment doesn't have to become your need for revenge. Her stuckness doesn't have to become yours. This is hard, maybe the hardest thing you'll ever do, because it requires you to be bigger than the situation. It requires you to absorb pain without returning it. It requires you to be misunderstood without demanding understanding. It requires you to lose in the short term to win in the long term. But here's what's waiting on the other side. Peace, actual peace, not the performance of peace, the real thing. A life built on your terms, not in reaction to her terms. Relationships based on truth, not on shared enemies. A future that's yours to create. The punishment will end, either because she exhausts herself, or because she finally grieves what she lost, or because you become so boring to attack that she loses interest. It doesn't matter which. What matters is that when it ends, you're still standing, still sane, still capable of love and trust and openness, still human. That's the real victory. Not defeating her, not proving she was wrong, not even getting people to believe your side. The real victory is remaining yourself through the storm. Everything else is just noise. This is raw and real. Thanks for watching.